Hello and welcome to the University of California, Berkeley E40 and E100 Introduction to Laboratory Equipment. My name is Ryan Tsai, and this is the first video in a series that will familiarize you with the solderless breadboard, power supply, digital multimeter, function generator, oscilloscope, and soldering techniques. This is the typical laboratory setup in our 140 Corey Hall. Now, depending on where you work, you might use different models or brands of instruments from the ones we explained. But most instruments that you will find in an industrial setting and in many of the research laboratories across campus will be similar, so it's a good idea for you to become familiar with these instruments. In this first video, I will cover the solderless breadboard. For more information, quick start guides and equipment manuals are available on your course website. The solderless breadboard is a cheap, convenient way of wiring up and experimenting with prototype circuits. The way it works is these holes that you see on the breadboard are connected in separate groups by conducting strips. These holes that you see along the red and blue lines are connected in two separate strips, like so, here and here. And these holes are connected across in strips of 5 holes. You can see that here where we ripped the back off a breadboard. Each of these strips is ideally a node with the same potential at every point relative to ground. In case you don't know what a node is, I'll explain quickly with an example circuit. The circuit components are called branches, and the wires that connect them are called nodes. This brings me to my next point. If you've never wired up a circuit on a breadboard before, you might have a hard time doing it the first couple of times. You're probably used to thinking about circuits on paper, where they're nice and clean. They definitely won't be this nice on a breadboard. Don't think about circuits in terms of wires and components. Instead, think of circuits in terms of nodes. Remember that the voltage at a node is always measured to the voltage at another node. There is no such thing as an absolute voltage. Generally, we choose a common reference node from which all other node voltages are found relative to, and call this ground. To make the math simpler, when we perform circuit analysis, we say the potential at ground is 0 volts. For example, if this voltage source is 5 volts, then this node is plus 5 volts from the ground.
A resistance button here to bring up your ohm meter.
If we represented the voltage at this node by a variable name, then we would draw it on the diagram either like this or like this, to show explicitly that this voltage's value is relative to the ground. On a circuit diagram, if we want some node to be at the same potential as ground, we simply attach a ground to the node, and we understand that on the diagram, all of these grounded nodes are at 0 potential. In a real circuit, if it's convenient, we link them together with a wire, but not in all cases. With these simple but important preliminaries, let us consider basic circuit prototyping. Careful organization pays dividends, and here are some general rules to follow. 1. Use short wires and make sure the bare ends are properly inserted into the board. Tall loops of wires have a tendency to fall out when making other connections or measurements. Such errors can take a lot of time to track down. 2. Avoid bare wires from making unintended or unreliable connections. 3. Consistency with wire colors helps when tracking down wiring errors. Red is normally used for positive supply, black for ground. Keep in mind, however, that the colors are not always consistent between different instruments, and that the ports at the top are not internally connected to the rest of the breadboard. You have to manually wire them together. 4. When prototyping large circuits, it pays to proceed in sections and to thoroughly test each part of the circuit before adding components. We will learn how to run such a test in a later video. And that covers the breadboard. Remember to be safe and respect the equipment, and I will see you next time to discuss the power supply.